Christmas is a great time of year for many, certainly, which is why there are many comedy films centered around it. Whether it's to laugh along with such a happy time, or to have some relatability to the situations of the season, whatever may happen.
Luckily for moviegoers, a lot of the most well-known actors out there have starred in Christmas comedies, continuing their careers of making people laugh and applying it to the season.
Jack Frost, the fatherly snowman rock star played by Michael Keaton.
Scott Calvin, otherwise known as Santa Claus, played by Tim Allen.
Buddy the Elf, the cheery Christmas lover played by Will Ferrell.
And Howard Langston, or Turbo Man, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We're including everything we can for all of the characters, including some sources you may not have thought of beyond their original movies, like video games or musicals.
So with that said, let's get started with this Christmas-themed bonus multiverse match episode.
Jack Frost was once a loving father who was getting into the music business with his band named the Jack Frost Band. He was starting to make it up in the music world, but at the cost of not being able to spend as much time with his family.
This was especially hard on Jack's son, Charlie, who just wanted to spend more time with his dad. Jack promised they'd all go on a Christmas vacation to spend some quality time together, but regrettably, he was pulled away from his family yet again for a record deal.
This unfortunately got Charlie to finally give up on his dad, as he left to go and make the deal. However, having second thoughts, Jack decided to turn back around and spend Christmas with his family after all. It seemed like this would be a happy ending for them, until tragedy struck.
After his tragic death in a car crash, a year goes by, and Charlie still hasn't quite gotten over the death of his father. So, after playing a magic harmonica Jack had given to him as a gift, Jack Frost came back to this mortal plane as a snowman. Yeah.
I mean, could the universe really be that unoriginal? I don't know. I mean, is it the name, Jack Frost? Because if that's it, that's not even clever.
Now stuck as a snowman, Jack tries to rekindle his relationship with his son and get a chance to say goodbye.
It's actually a pretty sad concept for a family film, but it does have its more comedic moments, which I suppose can lead us into what Jack can do.
Jack can pull his snowman body apart, or at least he can take his lower half and throw it, or survive if it has been destroyed and the rest of his body is still intact.
He was okay after being caught up in a snowplow, but that actually about does it for his physical feats. I mean, he's a snowman, he's made of frozen water, and the most he has for limbs are sticks. So he's a bit physically frail compared to his human self, but he does at least retain the mind of his human self.
Jack has shown some trickiness with his snowman body, using its separation to avoid branches and things like that. He can also come up with a lot of snow puns on the fly. That's snow joke! Jack indeed likes to joke around and have fun, and also remains very playful as a snowman, getting into snowball fights and playing hockey, showing some surprising maneuverability and skill for a snowman.
Jack is an incredibly caring and loving father and husband, despite not always being there for his kid. It's mostly from a place of wanting to provide for his family while living the dream he had always wanted as a kid, which is to become a rock star, and I guess to forever cover Christmas songs like Frosty the Snowman.
When it comes to his skills, Jack turned out a pretty quick snowball fighter, throwing them like a baseball pitching machine with rapid fire. He can snowboard as well, and he can even use snow thrown at him to add to his body, or use as snowball ammo.
Thanks to his new snowman body, Jack is capable of removing his limbs and feeling no pain. He can even keep moving around when his body parts are removed, and he can remove his stick hands. Jack can also assure that he maintains his physical body by using snow to regenerate. As long as there is some snow nearby, Jack can put it on his body and maintain his form.
I've mentioned his use of snowballs, as well as snowboarding. Maybe he can also use that snowboard to thwack people with. Sure. He also shares a great weapon in his arsenal with that of the extensive Jill from the movie Jack and Jill, that being a stick.
If he needs to thwack people, he can use this stick, and he can even shoot hockey pucks at his enemies with it. I don't like the idea of this guy coming at me with a large stick. He already looks kinda creepy, but now he can truly hurt me.
Unfortunately, it's not always cool for this snowman. If it's sunny, he could melt. I mean, even if it's room temperature or non-snow covered ground, he could get hurt. Hair dryers even hurt him. This is like that guy with the glass bones from SpongeBob, but for real.
Aside from that, his arms can be easily removed, and once, he had snowball tits in this PG movie. Okay, Jack Frost, have your jokes. But another weakness is that, once he's come to accept that it's his time to move on, he'll sort of just phase out and go on to the afterlife after becoming Michael Keaton once again.
This really reminds me that this entire movie is about a dad dying on Christmas. But ultimately, despite his screw-ups, Jack Frost proved that he truly loved his family. And if he's gotta be a snowman to express that to them, then so be it.
I'm home.
Scott Calvin was in the aftermath of a messy divorce, with his ex-wife dating an obnoxious psychiatrist, and his son preferring to be with his mom, more so than Scott himself.
Then, on Christmas Eve, he tried to make his son still feel nice by telling him that Santa was real, when his wife's new boyfriend had said that Santa wasn't. But suddenly, Scott heard someone bumping around on the rooftop, and had to check it out.
Hey, yo! What's that? Oh! Whoa, whoa!
Then, Santa died. He just died. And it's a Disney movie. Alright.
Tim Allen killed Santa Claus. That is what this movie's all about. Apparently, if you've killed Santa, you are required to become the new Santa Claus, which Scott unwittingly does, slowly transforming into the mythical man and becoming the new Father Christmas. Kind of a dark premise to base a beloved Disney trilogy on, huh?
In spite of his fat Santa-ness, which took some getting used to, Scott showed surprising agility and physical skill, playing football with elves, swinging around on ropes, and kicking Jack Frost, different one, hard enough to launch him away. As well, he pushes ice cubes the size of himself a fair distance, and, he can double jump. Can you do that?
He was able to endure his scuffle with an evil toy Santa, who was trying to take his job, and was basically unfazed when that Santa bashed his head into a metal handle. He later got bashed in the head with a shovel by Jack Frost. Again, a different one than Michael Keaton.
He also shows some speed. He repaired a broken toy at a superhuman pace, and he outran a large snowball, albeit not a very fast one. You know, family comedies aren't usually much for massively faster than light feats, okay?
Scott was always a crafty guy, even before becoming Kris Kringle. He can make up lies when needed, and he's pretty good at managing Christmas-related affairs, and generally runs things pretty smoothly.
He knows his way around toys, and fixing them, as well as contracts once he's read them. Given that he recorded Jack Frost saying that he wished he wasn't Santa, using that to invoke the escape clause.
Scott is a delightful jokester when he means to be, but despite being Santa, he isn't immune to being a bit cynical and sarcastic. But he does have an overall good heart, and has a genuine love for his family. Calvin is also very forgiving towards his enemies, and often gives them second chances out of the goodness in his heart. But alright, if he weren't so sparing, what are some of the things he could do?
General skills-wise, he's pretty stealthy, especially given that he has to be a Santa Claus. He's also skilled at throwing snowballs, to the point of defeating Jack Frost with just a few, and has an innate awareness of whether someone's bad or good. So be good for goodness sakes.
As a perk to being Santa, Scott's body can be made to squeeze through tight spaces, like chimneys and even pipes. Another perk is that, if there is no chimney in the child's house, he can conjure up a chimney inside. Although Scott himself has no idea how he does this, it sort of just happens.
Scott has also now gained numerous summoning abilities, like summoning a sled with 2 horses pulling it, just in case, or an entire bag of gifts at will. He can also summon mistletoe. Mostly he did this for kissing his wife, but if he wanted to, he could summon this inside someone's body to poison someone. Actually, couldn't he summon the bag of gifts or sled inside someone's body? Oh lord.
Oh my god. I guess so. He could do that if you were a freak.
I'm sorry. Versus battles may have put me in an odd mindset. Well, he can also manipulate snow, or at least can make it snow on top of himself, or others.
For weapons, he's got himself a fire extinguisher if ever he needs one, and of course he has his magic bag. This bag kind of acts like hammer space, able to pull out all kinds of things, even things way too large to reasonably fit inside, like an entire canoe. The bag can even allow him to levitate through the air, and even though it seems to have a mind of its own, it will always help Santa out.
Santa has a fireproof suit that he wears, mostly so that he can get through chimney fireplaces, but he can also use it to glide around like a flying squirrel. He also has a few festive toys to thwack people with, like a jack-in-the-box that springs outward, a toy tank that can break through frozen walls, and even a candy cane that can temporarily make him invincible for about 5 seconds. He also has a rope that was gifted to him, mainly because he's afraid of falling off of a roof and dying, which was the fate of the last Santa Claus.
And this ultimately leads us to Scott Calvin's weaknesses. Scott seems to be afraid of falling off roofs, since that's what killed the previous Santa. Considering his own durability isn't too impressive, this may be something he actually needs to worry about. Also, isn't it weird how after Scott kills the old Santa, not a single elf mourns or even cares that the old Santa is dead? That's pretty sad. Is the same thing gonna happen to Scott when he dies?
He also has a limited pool of magic when he's not at the North Pole, and is only able to do a few things before he runs out. Not only that, but if he wastes his magic, he'll never be able to return to the North Pole. This also presumably means he won't have any magic anymore, period.
Still, despite the oddity of the situation, Scott Calvin was ultimately a very good Santa Claus, who proved on multiple occasions that he was the perfect man for the job.
We're done, Comet. Ho, ho, ho. Back to the house. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. When I wake up, I'm getting a CAT scan.
Once there was a baby from an orphanage who accidentally crawled into Santa's sack. Once he managed to survive long enough to get to the North Pole, despite being a baby, he was found and raised as an elf.
Soon enough, it was becoming more and more apparent to himself that he was different from the rest of the elves. Soon, his adopted elf father told him the truth, that he was a human, and that he belonged in the human world of his real father, Walter Hobbs. Unfortunately for Buddy, his dad turned out to be on the naughty list.
It took a while for him to prove himself, not only to his dad, but to the human world in general. He even ends up in jail for assaulting a mall Santa for not being the real Santa. Luckily, Walter takes some pity on him and bails him out, even taking him for a DNA test to see and prove that he is actually Buddy's father.
Shenanigans ensue as Buddy meets his stepbrother, falls in love with a coworker at a toy store, and ultimately gains the love of his father, changing him for the better and getting him to realize that family is more important than work. Buddy certainly touched a lot of hearts inside and outside of the movie, but can he beat the shit out of you?
Apparently so. He's stronger than any other elves he worked with, mostly due to his size, accidentally squishing one by stepping on them. He's lugged around some heavy objects working for Santa, and can even throw around other elves with relative ease. When he introduces himself in the musical, he just straight up bursts through a wooden wall as the first thing. So maybe the writers knew about versus battles and wall-level feats.
Yes, that must be it! They wanted to buff Buddy. Buff Buddy they did, since he's pretty much unharmed after busting through that wall. Buddy generally seems resilient to pain, able to shake it off after getting hit by a car. This happens only once in the original, but in the musical of Jim Parsons, known for playing Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory, it's a running gag, and he'll often get hit by cars. He even gets hit hard enough to be sent flying, which is a touch more extreme than in the movie.
Back to the movie, he endures getting mauled by a raccoon, a mall Santa beating, multiple snowball blows to the head, and another beating from Peter Dinklage.
Now, due to his years of living in the North Pole, Buddy's maturity was stunted, as he basically acts like a child, and seems to be about as intelligent as one. He's certainly oblivious to the modern world, doing various things that make him stand out in New York, which is already filled with a bunch of weird people.
He's generally very positive and happy, if a bit loud at times. But he can get angry, especially at Santa impersonators. Ultimately, he is a good person who did change people's lives for the better. What kind of abilities help him get through life? There may be some coming up. Now.
Buddy is skilled at snowball fighting, able to single-handedly win against a horde of kids. He can generally make his targets, even when they're far away and running. Buddy is also skilled at making Christmas decorations and toys. Considering his upbringing as an elf, this shouldn't be a surprise.
This guy is also a very stealthy elf, managing to hide from mall security in a toy store overnight, while also decorating the entire store so that he could blend in. And again, he's managed to hold his own in public confrontations, like when he fought with the mall Santa.
Buddy also displays an ability to manipulate size, whether it be his own size or the size of others. He can grow to around the size of a building, or down to the size of a snowflake. To further into weirdness, Buddy seems to have some light levitation powers, partially because he's a cartoon character now, but he can also walk on clouds, which is a potential extension of this ability.
Having been trained as an elf, Buddy is very crafty with toys. and has a kit that includes scissors and a hammer, which could also be potentially dangerous if utilized that way. He also has Christmas lights that can tie people up, and much like other characters already, has a snow-based offense, even rapidly throwing snowballs similarly to Jack Frost, as well as snowboarding in a similar fashion. But, like the other characters, we will not skip over his weaknesses.
As we mentioned before, Buddy is very childish and isn't incredibly smart. He's easily frightened, especially with Jack-in-the-Box toys, and he's gullible, unable to recognize danger, even when it's on the table running right towards him. Although he has gotten into fights intentionally before, like with the mall Santa.
But he is a well-meaning individual who definitely shows the Christmas spirit, and he ultimately had a successful life, getting his father off the naughty list, successfully integrating both his Christmas life and a normal life together, and living happily ever after.
How are we gonna get the star on top?
I got it.
Howard Langston was a busy father, who was working so much that he began neglecting his family. This ultimately resulted in Howard missing his son's karate practice, which he had promised he'd be there for. In order to win back the respect of his son, he promised he'd get him the most popular toy around Christmas time, Turbo Man.
He would have to go through a lot, however, as he forgot to buy one when they were more common, and now found himself in a bad situation.
Which reminds me, you got the doll, right?
The doll.
With a mix of true love for his family and unbridled madness, Howard was sent all around town looking for the Turbo Man doll, getting trampled in malls, fighting off a bunch of mall Santas, and even getting to the point where he was dressed up as Turbo Man and had to fight against Sinbad. This movie really goes off the wall, in a really funny way, luckily enough.
Howard has endured getting hit by mall Santas so hard that he flipped over, or even got sent flying, getting mace in the eyes, the beatings of a horde of angry purse-wielding mothers, or even getting tased.
What lovely Christmas spirit they all have. Now, considering he's played by Arnold, he's a really strong guy, able to punch people so hard they flip over, knock down 4 grown men with a candy cane, kick open a locked door, and even knock out a full-grown and angry deer. This same deer was able to ram through a wooden wall unfazed.
He's also able to outrun that deer, and deers are said to be able to run at up to 30 miles per hour. This is above Usain Bolt's top speed of 27.8 miles per hour, meaning that Howard is potentially the fastest man ever.
As a salesman, he's successful and tricky with his selling tactics, calling everyone his #1 customer in order to win them over, and he applies good thinking skills in other aspects of his life. He was pretty good at tracking down any leads he had towards finding a Turbo Man doll, and when he was confronted by the police in an illegal doll-making warehouse, he found a fake ID and made up a convincing lie about being an undercover cop, which got him out of there safely.
Howard has a bad temper at some points, but it may be that we're seeing him at a particularly stressful moment in his life. He loves his family, and will go to extreme lengths to keep them around, as is made obvious by his whole quest here. He does have morals, as he isn't going to outright steal one from the neighbor's kid. He thought about it, but ultimately decided it would be a poor decision, and wanted to get his own kid a Turbo Man in a more honest way, relatively speaking.
Though, even if his anger doesn't help him with his family relationship, it was enough of a driving force to get him to beat the shit out of a horde of fake Santas, showcasing his excellent fighting skill. Later, when he was dressed as Turbo Man, he was even able to hold his own against actors who knew choreography.
The major arsenal displayed in this movie is that of Turbo Man. Not just the toy, but an entire suit, complete with plastic armor to absorb blows, a boomerang, a plastic disc shooter, and an actual functioning jetpack, with flame propulsion and all. It can destroy weak branches, and is fast enough to let him fly above tall buildings in a matter of seconds, much like early Superman. Howard was bad at controlling this jetpack at first, but soon learned how to control it effectively, even saving his son from falling from a great height.
Alternatively, Howard at one point used a remote-control car in order to trip Sinbad.
Oh, poor baby.
And he later used a candy cane to beat the Santas with. However, all of this aggression can eventually get him to screw up, which leads to his faults.
Howard's temper can cause him to not always make the most clear, level-headed decisions, and he can get distracted by certain angering things, like Phil Hartman eating his cookies and rubbing it in his face. He also did still stumble a bit in trying to control the Turbo Man jetpack, crashing into things and being a potential danger.
But in the end of it all, Howard actually managed to fulfill his promise to his son and got him his Turbo Man doll. But, as it turned out, Howard had already proven how much he cared about his family that Jamie didn't even want the doll anymore, citing that Howard was the true Turbo Man.
Everything that you went through today for Jamie really shows how much you love him. And if you're willing to go through all of that for him just for a present, well, that makes me wonder.
What?
What did you get me?
Well, we have ourselves a merry little Christmas now. One where people are going to beat the hell out of each other.
This'll be a holly jolly Christmas bash. Which popular Christmas figure will end up winning? A snowman? Santa Claus himself? An elf? Or the hardworking parent who actually buys the presents? Let's see.
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
You sit on a throne of lies.
I just was looking for Turbo Man doll.
Where's your Christmas spirit? Let's kick some ice.
It's Turbo.
You started it.
I feel bad that the only one who ended up dead here was Jack Frost, even though I actually enjoy that movie pretty well. But this is our conclusion. Let's explain how we came to it and why the order was what it was.
The reason why Jack lost first is that he was literally weaker than a normal human. He could detach himself a bit, but many things, ranging from flaming jetpacks, Calvin's snow manipulation, or even just a few strong hits of any kind, could take him out of commission without people even really trying to kill him.
He doesn't have much in terms of hurting other people. He just has some pretty impressive regeneration, which, as we said, gets screwed with by everyone here. Even Buddy could get the better of him with his size manipulation. It's conceivable he could shrink Jack and then just hold him in his hand long enough to melt the poor guy. Or maybe just breathe on him really hard?
The hardest one to determine between was the Santa Claus Turbo Man matchup. Both can fly, but one has magical abilities and a decent arsenal, that being Santa, but Turbo Man's weaponry and armor are no slouch, and Howard is probably the best physical fighter here.
Ultimately, we decided that Howard had an edge over Scott, thanks to his greater physicality. He was strong enough to one-shot a deer who ran through a door, and he can generally knock people out, and Scott wasn't all that durable anyways. With his jetpack, Howard could certainly attack him faster than he could react, and could even drop Scott from way high up, considering a fall off a roof is something Scott fears.
But what makes it hard for Howard to beat Buddy? And what makes Buddy prevail overall? Well, everything Howard could throw at him, Buddy could tank, given that he busted through wooden walls, and survived getting hit by a car multiple times. He also has magic that would negate Howard's physicality, shrinking him down to a small, easily crushed size. As well, Buddy is not useless in a straight physical fight, as shown in his own mall confrontations, as well as his quick pitching arm in a snowball fight.
Howard's jetpack is useful for him staying in the air, but Buddy himself can hop on clouds and already kind of levitate, so Howard couldn't stay away from Buddy for too long. Even if he did try to stay away, Buddy's impressive snowball aim would assure that he could still throw snowballs at Howard, or potentially his other objects like hammers and scissors, which would probably hurt more.
Buddy also matched the others in terms of snowball throwing and snowboarding, being about even with Jack Frost in this respect, and surpassing the Santa Claus due to his own magical abilities not having a limiter, unlike Scott Calvin.
Ultimately, thanks to his superior abilities and odd physical power, shockingly, Buddy the Elf just had what it took to come out on top against everyone else here.
Making this multiverse match's winner, Buddy the Elf.
Outside the snow is falling and friends are calling you. Come on, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with you. Giddy yap, let's go. Let's look at the show. We're riding in a wonderland of snow. Giddy yap, it's grand. Just holding your hand. We're gliding along with the song of a wintry fairyland. Our cheeks are nice and rosy and comfy cozy are we. We're snuggled up together like two birds of a feather would be.